Hello, I'm Anne-Marie Carvalho. I'm a therapist and family lawyer, and this is the latest in my videos, Bite-Size Therapy. And the idea behind these videos is that I talk about issues that commonly come up for my clients in therapy and talk about some of the techniques that I use with clients to try and help them deal with the common issues that come up in life, all that stuff that keeps us awake at night. We try and work through together. So there is one issue that has come up again and again in therapy sessions, particularly since the start of the pandemic, and that is anxiety. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. And to be honest, the question I would ask is, why wouldn't we be suffering from anxiety at the moment? We are living in the middle of a pandemic. It's a genuinely unsettling, worrying time. We've got more worries than we ever had before, it feels like. And so what I'm going to do, first of all, is depict what life is like living through COVID using the power of the board game Jenga. So here's my Jenga pieces. So this is what life is like when you're pootling along with your usual life stuff going on. So our Jenga pieces are going to depict the usual problems that we have in life. So this one might be some money worries, maybe a few relationship problems with your children, or you might have problems trying to have children. So that adds a whole layer of stress. Maybe job worries, hating your job, hating your boss, dealing with elderly parents, trying to manage their care, and maybe a few kind of broader familial problems. And then we started to get some broader problems coming in when Brexit happened, when all that started to kick off. So that added a whole layer of worry and stress for lots of people. And then COVID hit. And to me, it's a bit like COVID has added loads and loads of problems. You get the general idea. It's added a whole big layer of stress and anxiety to people's lives. And so that's what we're managing at the moment. For me, it's a bit like we were sort of all going along playing this game called life, and then suddenly halfway through the rules have suddenly changed. So we have to kind of come to terms with that, and anxiety about this new uncertainty that we're living with is something that we all have to try and manage, and everyone's suffering from anxiety as far as I can tell. And what I think is unhelpful sometimes is to sort of pathologise anxiety and to think of ourselves as, oh, I'm a person who has panic attacks, or I'm a person who really suffers from anxiety, or I'm an insomniac, sort of labelling yourself in that way. Because the truth is, we're all in it together. We're all suffering from some form of anxiety. So what we're going to talk about today is ways to try and help you manage that when you're in the moment. So I'm going to give you three steps to take when you're in the middle of what I think of as an anxiety overload, when you're in that pressure-filled moment, whether it's a work situation or a difficult conversation, or just feeling overwhelmed at everything that's going on, or all three perhaps. One of the key things that I would say to you to bear in mind is that when we are in the middle of anxiety, we have this quite unhelpful tendency, which is to try and fight it, because the feelings associated with it are so uncomfortable. That kind of feeling of, oh, my heart's racing now, and I'm not usually aware of, the sound of my heart, the feeling of my heart, and you get that sort of lump in your throat, or you start feeling hot and sweaty, and you start to become kind of hyper aware of these feelings, and we start to try and fight it. And that's actually the least helpful thing that you can do, trying to fight your anxiety through becoming more busy at work, or doing this or doing that or doing the other thing, trying to deny that the anxiety is there. Actually, the most helpful thing we can do is try to sort of ease into it, try to accept it on some level, because the more we try and resist it, the more it digs its little claws into us. And actually, if we can open up to it and try to accept it, then it passes through much more quickly. So that's what our three tips are really about today. So first tip is, step one, stop doing stuff. Whatever you're in the middle of, if you're feeling an anxiety overload, step away from the work, step away from the conversation, whatever you're doing, go somewhere quiet if you can, and start doing this breathing exercise. Breathe in for 4 and breathe out for 8. So in for 4 and out for 8. So in for 4, out for 8. So the idea behind this is that you start to breathe out for longer than the time that you're breathing in, roughly by a ratio of 2 to 1. And at first, this will make you feel a little bit more anxious because it feels a bit weird. You're trying to kind of change your breathing from what it naturally is. But what you find after a few minutes is things start to slow down because you've got more of an out breath, less of an in breath. You're expelling more air. Things start to slow down and your body starts to slow down and your racing mind starts to slow down a little bit. Step 2 is all about getting grounded. And while you do step 2, I want you to continue with your breathing. So continue with in for 4, out for 8. Step 2 is about getting grounded, as I say. Get your feet on the floor, sit in your chair, hands on the table, arms on the armrests of your armchair. I want you to engage your senses. I want you to think, what can I hear? I can hear the lawnmower next door. What can I see? I can see photographs on the wall. What can I smell? I can smell the food in the oven. Engage all of your senses and actually talk yourself through this, because as I said earlier, the thing about anxiety is we have a tendency to try and fight it. We go into our analytical mind and we try and escape the present moment, and actually what we need to do is get grounded with our senses and experience the present moment. Get slap bang into the present moment and out of your thinking brain. Step 3, our last step. I want you to carry on with steps 1 and 2. Carry on with your breathing, carry on with the sensations of being grounded, getting in touch with your senses. But I want you to grab a notebook and I want you to write down and answer the following 3 questions. First question is, what's the worst thing that could happen in this situation? Write down the answer to that. No matter how extreme your answer is, the more extreme, the better. What happens for me when I do this exercise is, when I write down the extreme scenario I'm imagining, often it helps me in writing it down just to get that distance, and then I can look at it and go, oh, actually, that seems a bit extreme. That's probably not going to happen. Writing it down just helps me to get that little bit of perspective on it. Question 2, I want you to write down the answer to this question. What's the best outcome in this scenario? Now, this is more difficult to answer if you're a natural-born pessimist like I am. We sort of scrabble around thinking, I don't know what a positive outcome might be. But I want you to force yourself to imagine what's the best possible outcome. Your anxiety might be about a medical appointment. You might be worrying about a scan that you've just had. So the best possible outcome might be that the scan comes back clear and everything's fine. Write it down. Question 3, I want you to write down the answer to this question. What is the most likely outcome here? Now, this is the last question for a reason, because what I find is once I've answered the first 2 questions, what's the worst possible outcome? What's the best possible outcome? My mind's a bit like a pendulum. It eventually swings back to a natural midpoint. And the midpoint is the answer to this question. What is the most realistic outcome of this? And it's usually a lot less extreme than what we're projecting. Even in situations relating to COVID, my mind can take me off on some huge kind of flight of fancy, disaster movie mind. Usually when I get to this, by the time I get to this question, what's the most likely outcome here? I'm able to write down a less extreme answer than the one that I might have originally come up with. So I want you to try those 3 steps. I hope that's been helpful, and remember there's lots more information available on my website, which is www.carvallotherapy.com, and thank you for watching and take care.